I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. Today is Monday, March 2nd, 2026. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along. I want to start this week just by planning to focus on things happening in two critical areas for me. One is I've got a story in the upcoming edition, today's edition of Insight News. It's a digital edition that focuses on the challenge by Senate President Bobby Joe Champion to Governor Walz's proposed pivot in how funding takes place for nonprofits. I'm going to read two articles. One is the cover story for today's edition, and I'm going to read an op-ed that I wrote that states the Insight News position that encourages you to be alarmed, to be aware, to be alarmed, and to act. I think there's a lot at stake, and the key is to recognize that what is at stake is connected to the general sense and emergence of a repressive attitude coming from the White House, affecting the global order. We're at war right now with Iran, and it relates, in my view, to what happened here with the attempted occupation of Minnesota by ICE, and it relates to how we as a community have responded and must respond. So I want to begin just by saying that we're going to cover a lot of ground in this conversation. And if you are interested in being in the conversation, adding your voice, we welcome that. On the screen, you see the URL, not the URL, but the QR code. Click on that and we'll invite you into the studio. I've also sent the Facebook post out already, inviting people to join this conversation. The Facebook post said, I'll read the note on the Facebook post. It says, it questions whether ethnic cleansing and state funding for Black and nonprofits is at hand. I say, let's talk about it. Join me today on the Conversation with Al McFarlane to talk about this. We're doing it here on Facebook, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. So if you're on any of those platforms, we thank you for being here. We treasure your voice, your interest, your point of view, and we want you to join. And let somebody know that we're live now. We want you to show up by clicking on the comment section. Say your name, say where you're watching from, and click on your response to these topics, and let me know what other things are top of mind for you right now. The most important thing is that we need to talk. We need to talk every day. We need to make sure that we have a chance to explain our point of view, our interests, our concerns, our fears, our hopes, and our desires. I believe we owe that to ourselves. We owe it to our children. We owe it to the future. We owe it to the legacy, the ancestors, the ones that paved the way for us to be here, those whose shoulders we stand on. So conversation is critical. Conversation now is more critical than ever before. Why? I think we are moving into an arena, and this is kind of, in my view, the invasion or the bombing of Iran is about, is where forces that rely on force and brute raw power believe they can bomb the hell out of humanity, intimidate people not only in Iran, but people around the globe. And I think we're at a point where the world has to stand up and say, you know what, we're not afraid. We're not accepting it. We will speak, we will stand, and we will project a different analysis, a different point of view, one that allows us to be our best selves, to act in a spirit of sovereignty, a spirit of ownership, partnership in creation, and that partnership reflects a need to have reason, balanced approaches to problem solving and to advancing the well-being of all humanity. If you think that that is something that makes sense, maybe you think it's Pollyannish, maybe you think it's idealistic or naive, and it very well could be. It's simply the way I see it. And I think that the most important thing is to remember this is a conversation worth having. If we don't have the conversation, what happens? We, by our silence, allow and permit, we invite the total control of every aspect of our lives. We invite, we African people, Black people, by silence and by not projecting our point of view, by not giving our voice in the marketplace of ideas and of decision making, we by default surrender our future and our fate to those who have demonstrated what they will do, what they have done, and what they can do. What am I talking about? What are you talking about, Al McFarlane? I think you're talking about the history of the relationship between our people and the colonizing impetus that was reflected in the transatlantic slave trade and the period of slavery in North America and in the Americas and around the world, in the Jim Crow. And it's also reflected in what appears to be a willingness to return to that kind of undeserved privilege and power by the few over the many. And the many, that's the target of this, is the many that have resisted the most. That many, I believe, sisters and brothers, is our people. We've resisted slavery. We resisted we fought to end slavery. We fought to open the door, the pathway to freedom and to inclusion. Historically, since we were here, since we got off the boats during slavery, we have survived and we have thrived in certain ways we have not. But we have moved with a sense of hope, a sense of expectation, a sense of possibility, and a sense that lets us know that our voices do matter, our positions matter, and that we probably are the holders of the answers to the turmoil in the world. It's about us finding out how to be ourselves, to be our best selves, and to stand with that. Well, I'm going to read a couple of articles again, talking about what's happening here in Minnesota. Last week, Friday, I mentioned and read a piece from a community newspaper about a challenge at the state government. We're going to start with that. Let me bring up this article first. First of all, I want you to like and share. I need you to subscribe to the channel. And if you're new to this, please subscribe, like, and share. Let somebody know this conversation is going on right now. We want to expand the conversation. Also, as I said at the beginning, love to have your voice. I trust your voice. I respect your point of view, and I invite you to join me in a conversation. We need to talk to ourselves and talk to the world. Finally, share. Let somebody know this conversation is going on. Read Insight News. I'm going to share with you a story that's the cover story for Insight News. Let me bring it up. And this is available online at issue.com/Insight News. It's where you can get the digital copy of the paper every week and our digital archives. You can see what we've been talking about for years and years and years. Jared, bring the story up and let me show that, and I'll sort of share these two essays that are in this week's paper. Can you bring it on screen now, Jared? Bring the issue up if you can. There we go. So the headline says, Champion Challenges Walz's Funding Pivot. I'll read this story first. This story sort of summarizes what's going on that is of concern to us, to me. I think we should all be concerned about it. The political landscape in St. Paul is witnessing a rare and public rift between two of Minnesota's most powerful allies. Minnesota State Senate President Bobby Joe Champion is standing firm against a proposal by Governor Tim Walz that could fundamentally reshape how the state supports community-led initiatives. At the heart of the dispute is the state's response to the Feeding Our Future scandal, a massive federal fraud case involving the misappropriation of millions in pandemic-era food aid. Senator Champion notes, however, that there are no allegations of fraud involving organizations that received direct appropriations, and he argues that including the end of such funding in an anti-fraud package, wrongly suggests that they contributed to the crisis, likening that move to a man passing gas and blaming the dog. While both leaders agree that fraud is intolerable, they are sharply divided on the remedy. Governor Walz has proposed ending the practice of direct legislative grants. That's what this article is all about. Funding negotiated directly by lawmakers for specific nonprofits, the governor favoring a strictly competitive bidding process for all state contracts. Senator Champion's position is one that protects community sovereignty. Senator Champion, a long-time advocate for North Minneapolis and the broader community, views the governor's proposal not as a solution, but as a structural barrier. His analysis suggests that a one-size-fits-all competitive bidding process will inherently favor large, well-resourced institutions while locking out the very grassroots organizations that possess the cultural competence to serve under-resourced populations. Quoting Senator Champion, "We cannot allow the criminal actions of a few to be used as a pretext to dismantle the infrastructure of community-led progress." And that's kind of what he's saying. He's signaling that in his legislative analysis. He said, direct grants are often the only way that smaller, culturally specific organizations who are doing the real work on the ground can bypass a state bureaucracy that has historically ignored them. Champion argues that the governor's recommendation ignores the sovereignty of narrative, the idea that the community knows its own needs best. By removing the ability of legislators to direct funds to proven community partners, the state risks returning to a trickle-down model of social service where the Black community is treated as a passive recipient rather than an active agent of change. What's the governor's strategy? It's a call for oversight. Governor Walz, facing pressure, this is where I think the rubber meets the road, from the Trump administration's Department of Justice and local critics over the oversight failures during the pandemic, frames his proposal as a necessary step towards transparency and accountability. He said Minnesotans need to know that their tax dollars are being used for their intended purpose. That's what the office said in the recent about their recent proposed procurement shifts. They go on to say that by moving toward a universal competitive bidding process, we ensure that every dollar is vetted, every organization is scrutinized, and the potential for fraud is minimized. The governor's plan would effectively end the carve-outs that legislators often secure for nonprofits in their districts during the biennial budget process. So here's the deep dive. What are the potential negative impacts on Black nonprofits? The experience-informed leadership of our community demands that we look beneath the surface of the quote-unquote transparency idea to see who is actually at risk. For Black-led nonprofits and small businesses, the governor's proposal creates several high-stakes hurdles. One, the resource gap in bidding. Competitive bidding processes are notoriously complex. They require grant writers and compliance officers and legal teams. Larger white-led nonprofits have this infrastructure. Smaller Black-led firms often do not. Number two, decoupling results from relationships. What does that mean? Direct legislative grants rely on what we call relational authority. A legislator knows which organizations are actually feeding children or training workers. A cold bidding process prioritizes paper capacity over proven impact. Number three, institutional memory loss. By moving all the funding to a centralized competitive model, the state risks ignoring the historical continuity of organizations that have spent decades building trust in the African American community. It's a trust that cannot be quantified in a bid. So how does this look from the ground, from the field? Community leaders are saying that the governor's strategy could result in the ethnic cleansing of the nonprofit ecosystem. Let me say it again. Community leaders are warning that the governor's strategy could lead to the ethnic cleansing of the nonprofit ecosystem. What the governor is suggesting is a death sentence for grassroots innovation, says one North Minneapolis community organizer. If every dollar has to go through a state procurement office that doesn't know our names or our history, the money will stay with the big boxes of the nonprofit world. We are being punished for a crime we didn't commit. So what is the assessment? Let's look at accountability without erasure. The challenge for the Minnesota legislature in the coming session will be to find a path that ensures accountability without ensuring erasure. Senator Champion's analysis suggests that the answer lies in enhanced oversight of direct grants rather than their total elimination. This would involve stricter reporting requirements and auditing for legislative asks, ensuring that community service is protected from those who would exploit it while keeping the door open for those who truly serve. As this debate moves through the legislature, stakes are clear. Will Minnesota's response to fraud be to build higher walls around the state capitol, or to build stronger, more transparent bridges to the communities that need support the most? That article is appearing in today's Insight News. It's online at insightnews.com, or you can get the electronic edition at issue.com/insight news. That's number one. Interested in your reaction, your response. And you may not agree with Insight's story. In fact, we encourage you to bring your analysis and challenge what we have written. We think that we all gain by having robust conversations. So there is so before I read the second piece, which is an editorial under my byline, I want to again invite everyone to join the program, join the conversation. Let me know where you're watching from. Share, like, and let people know that this conversation is going on. It's an important conversation. It's about the money, how the money is going to be divided, and whether we lose as a community because we are voiceless and we have not exercised our right to provide our analysis, our expectations, and to act with a sense of power and purpose at the table of decision. Well, again, love to hear from you wherever you are. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let people know that we're here. And again, comment. We'd love to have your comments as well. So the second piece I'm going to share is a piece that is an op-ed piece. The headline on this piece, it's also on the cover of today's edition, is something I've said a lot. You've heard me say it before. They get the money, we get the misery. They get the money, we get the misery. Subhead is "Don't burn the village to catch a thief." So it's a piece that I wrote. Let me read that. It's a short piece, but I'd love to have your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree, and your thoughts, your position, your analysis is welcome. And I can tell you that, I can be dead wrong. This is just how I feel, how I see it, but I want to respect you for how you see things as well. I think that if we talk, if we reason, if we struggle with reasoning in the arena of reasoning, we all benefit. Our community does better, becomes better. So my article, my editorial, front page editorial says, the news coming out of St. Paul this week feels like a betrayal of the very communities that state leaders claim to protect. While Governor Tim Walz and the Trump administration engage in a high-stakes game of political chicken over fraud prevention, grassroots organizations in Twin Cities and beyond are the ones being lined up for the firing squad. Governor Walz's proposal to end legislative grants, to end direct legislative grants, is not a strategic reform. It is a structural eviction of Black excellence from the public square. By framing this as a response to the failure, or as a response to the Feeding Our Future scandal, the governor is using criminal actions of a few to justify the potential for systemic exclusion of the many. Senator Bobby Joe Champion is right to stand in the gap. He understands what the governor seemingly does not, and that is that direct appropriations are not the source of fraud. They are the source of life for under-resourced communities. There are no allegations of fraud that involve an organization that received a direct appropriation, none. And so to end direct appropriations as a part of the anti-fraud package suggests that the direct appropriations contributed to the state's fraud crisis. Again, I say it's analogous to a man passing gas and blaming the dog. As Senator Champion bluntly stated this week, I will not vote for and will actively rally support against any bill that includes an end to direct appropriations. He says, I am not willing to blame avenues used to invest in communities across our state that are not the source of or a contributor to fraud. For decades, Inside News has chronicled how Black-led nonprofits and small businesses operate on the front lines, often doing the heavy lifting that state agencies are too detached to handle. We don't just promote the efficacy and necessity of culturally centered services. We promote sovereignty, equity, and accountability. We are the trusted messengers, advancing the idea that our community must follow the money, challenging and exposing institutional injustices. As I've often said, they get the money, we get the misery. The governor's competitive bidding pivot assumes a level playing field exists. When you require a 50-page technical RFP for every dollar, you aren't selecting the best service provider, you're selecting the best grant writer. Large legacy institutions with multi-million-dollar endowments will win every time. Grassroots leaders, those with the relational authority to stop a bullet or feed a family in crisis, will be locked out because they don't have a compliance department. We are told this is about transparency, quote unquote transparency, but where was the transparency when the federal judges had to block the Trump administration from halting Medicaid and SNAP funds early this year? The state is being squeezed by a retribution campaign from Washington, and rather than holding the line, the governor is offering up our community's lifelines as a peace offering. We agree that accountability is sacred. Public service both is and requires stewardship. But you do not stop a leak by tearing down the house. You fix the pipes. If the governor wants to fight fraud, he should invest in building the capacity of local leaders to handle rigorous reporting without stripping them of their autonomy. He should listen to Senator Champion, who has spent a stellar career of public service standing shoulder to shoulder with us. Governor Walz, we are not the fraudsters you're looking for. We are the partners you cannot afford to lose. Do not let quote unquote accountability become a code word for abandonment. That's my editorial, that's my take, that's my voice. And it's in today's edition, the electronic edition of Inside News. Love to hear what you think, what your thoughts are. Give me your reaction. You can react right now in the chat. Let's see, Boyce Jones, thank you for your comment. Let me put it up. I haven't read it. I'll read it with you right now. Let me make my screen big so I can read it. I agree that we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater with the governor's proposal. The ringleader and tutor for the Feeding Our Future debacle was not a disadvantaged resident. Most small nonprofit agencies will not survive government funding losses. Boyce, thank you. So Boyce, if you want to come in and say more, explain that, give more context, we'd love it. Click on the QR code there, or I can send you the link. Jared, I don't know if you can put the link in for him, Well, we'd love to have you join the conversation. And we'd love to invite other people to join the conversation as well. Most importantly, share this conversation. Let people know. So what we're going to do this week, I'm going to focus on this topic is huge. It's really a big topic, and we can't sleep on it. We can't act like it's not important because it is important. And so I'm going to be inviting political and community and agency and ordinary people in community to join the program this week and every day this week while we have a conversation. I'm going to chop it up. Your voice is important too. We want you to weigh in on the conversation. Tell somebody that we're having the conversation and invite them to join as well. Let me know who you are and where you're watching from, where you're tuned in from, what platform you're on. If you're checking us out on Facebook or LinkedIn or on either of the YouTube channels, the YouTube channel for the Black Press of America, Black Press USA, or the Inside News Minnesota YouTube channel. We're grateful to have these platforms and to offer these platforms for important conversations. This is an important conversation. And let me say what else is on my mind. I asked my producer to pull up some links and shorts about the war. I mentioned at the beginning, we're at war. How do you feel? What is your thought about the fact that our country is bombing Iran as we speak? And sort of to put it in context, the bombing and the attack in Venezuela, Caracas, that led to the capture of President Maduro and his wife seems to be a dry run for what they're doing now in Iran. And in Iran, not only did they destroy the leadership, the Ayatollah is dead. And as I understand it, some 49 senior officials in the Iranian government administration have been killed by U.S. and Israeli bombing efforts. So I'd be glad to know how you feel about where we're going and what that means. So just as I envision or see the line between Venezuela and Iran, and the potential line between Venezuela, Iran, and threatened consequences in Greenland, for example, or other places, I also wonder and talk about and see a line between what happened in Minneapolis, the invasion of Minneapolis by ICE. What is that preparatory to? If Venezuela was a trial run for what's unfolding now in Iran, what was the invasion of Minneapolis by ICE a trial run for? It's a big question. It's a serious question, and I could be totally wrong, totally off, but I'm raising the question because I think some of you have the same question. Loretta Arredondo, thank you for your note. You put a URL in the chat. I don't know, Jerry, can you pull it up and see what that notice is? That's something we might want to share. But thank you for sending that. Loretta, if you want to join the program, jump on. We'd love to have you explain this article or idea, the YouTube short, I think it is, that you put. I can't look at it myself right now, but maybe, Jared, you can look at it and see if that's something that we can add to this program. So what do you think? What do you think? Loretta says it doesn't feel good, and she's playing for peace in the world. Let me show the URL. And Loretta, what's this URL say? What is this about? Can you tell me what it is? And if there are others who are listening that have a comment, a thought, a feeling, I'd love to know how you feel. I think, so one of my daughters called me a couple of days ago. She and her daughter, my granddaughter, live in a suburb, and they have a neighbor who is Latina. And so the neighbor had not been leaving their townhouse, for a little bit. and they noticed, and so she connected and said, "Are you okay? Being a neighbor, being sisterly, being friendly," and said, I'm going to go to the store. Can I get you something? Because my daughter goes to Mercado Central and gets ethnic and food, things like that. And so she said, "Sure, please, thank you," and gave her a list. So the daughter and granddaughter went to Mercado to buy things. And as they were talking to a butcher with their limited Spanish, trying to convey what the neighbor wanted them to get for her family, another customer who is Latina stood and sort of watched them and said, "Are you buying this for somebody?" So she said, "Yes, I am, a neighbor." And the woman, the shopper, said, "God bless you." Because she knew right then what was going on. This was an act of kindness, an act of caring, an act of sharing, one neighbor to another. And then she just looked at the list and was able to communicate more fully, more deeply with the butcher, the storekeeper, and found the product. And they ended up getting everything this family needed that was afraid to go out and buy, and brought it. And the lady was able to Zelle her the payment for the receipt. So it was just a great service. But that's what caring and compassion and sharing are all about. That's what being there for each other is all about. And that story is a story that's important to me because it makes me think about, reflect on how Minneapolis and St. Paul, how Twin Cities, how Minnesota is showing up in the world. And the way Minnesota showed up, protesting ICE, challenging our government, challenging the president, challenging the Department of Homeland Security, the Border Patrol, monitoring, alerting people, observing, and being present even in 40-degree wind chilled weather. Absolutely amazing. And so sometimes here in the middle of it, either we're on the street or we're not, but we're watching it on TV, we're listening to our neighbors and our friends, but we know something is happening. We say, well, I can't do that. I can't handle the cold, or I've got a job, or whatever it is. But we look at our neighbors and friends who are out there and we say, man, how can they do it? I couldn't do it, but they did it. And I'll say that they really is we, they making the protest, doing the sacrificial work of helping a neighbor, the sacrificial work of observing the movement of ICE, were the ones of us that were able to do it. And why it's important is that the world saw it. The country saw it. And so when I watch television and I see former President Barack Obama make a note on a talk show, and obviously his audience is global, that Minnesota showed what Americans can do and what Americans are made of and what Americans do when they stand for justice and stand for right, and they act righteously in the face of overwhelming odds and power, improbable odds. They stood up. So that's something that we need to keep saying to each other and encouraging each other to stand up, to speak truth to power, to serve each other, serve our neighbors, our neighborhoods, and to insist and demand accountability and responsibility, to not be overwhelmed, but to recognize that the world has watched what Minneapolis and St. Paul have produced in giving voice. And this is an extension of a spirit created out of the tragedy, the loss of life of George Floyd. This is George Floyd, Philando Castile, Jamar Clark, all of the people that have been wronged at the hands of government. And we have not remained silent. And our voices have grown. Well, they have to keep growing. So two things have to happen here. One is, despite the phenomenal effort Governor Walz put in supporting the vision of Kamala Harris in their bid for the White House, While you may consider it a loss, I say yes, but it was really movement on a path. We're going somewhere. We're building something, and we're going to get there, and we're going to win. I say that victory for us, our side, our people, is imminent. It is inevitable. We simply have to keep going. And because Barack Obama said, look at the people in Minnesota, that should tell you the world is watching you, it's watching us. And we simply have to stay the course, keep doing what we're doing, be a voice, have the conversation with each other and speak to the world, speak our truth and demand justice, demand balance, demand fairness, demand equity. I was watching Larry Daniels' Favor this morning on television. If you don't know who that is, take a note, take a pencil. On Sirius XM, channel 126, is called The View, a phenomenal resource and challenging challenge to the status quo, a series of talk show hosts and their guests who provide a fresh, new, powerful analysis or critique of the failure of the MAGA right and of the intent of the MAGA right to permanize its position of power at the expense of the citizens of our country and of humanity. And they're saying it. They're saying it plain. They're saying it loud. They're saying it clear. And today, she described the war in Iran. I'd heard this before, but I heard it again today, as the Epstein War. Epstein War. Think about that. The war in Iran as the Epstein War. What does that mean? It means somebody is willing to risk humanity to not be accountable for his sins, his evil deeds, his failures as a human being, and his transgressions, his violations of the law of our country and the law of God. That's what it means. And so here's another note from Doc Sanchez. Thank you, Doc. You're right on the money. Quoting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I refuse to believe the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. Well, we're on the same page, brother. I refuse that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. I think that we have a responsibility. We're the guardians of elevating, protecting, and growing, nurturing justice in the world. And it begins by us being together, being with each other, and having a conversation just like this. Well, so the other thing that I saw on Larry Daniels' Favor's show this morning, she used the term, right now, everybody has went into, what's the right word for it, a state of shock and immobilization because Trump has been saying, get rid of DEI, get rid of DEI, demonizing DEI, demonizing diversity, demonizing equity, and demonizing inclusion, saying that these things are hurting the country and our progress. And he wants to make America great again by getting rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But not only is he saying it, he's doing it. Books out of libraries and out of schools, monuments, artwork, documents that reveal in detail the ugly history of our country, not to blame, but to warn and to confess the truth. The Trump administration wants to ignore anything that they say makes white people feel uncomfortable. Well, Larry Daniels' Favors has created a term that I love. I'll be using it as opposed to when they talk about DEI. I'm going to talk about, she's talking about WEI. They say DEI, we say WEI. WEI, what is it? She says it's white, was it WEI? Now I forgot, just that quick. Incompetence was a third word. Somebody help me out if you're listening and you've heard this phrase before. White entitled incompetence. That's it. That is the problem. White entitled incompetence. That's what's running the country right now in the um, leadership of Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. Well, let me know how you feel. Let me know how you feel. What are your thoughts? Again, Doc, that's a great comment. Let me know where you're calling from too. You know, let me know what you think. We want to continue this discussion about Minnesota's legislature all week long this week. I'll be having it on the program tomorrow. If you want to be on the program, if you know somebody that should be on the program, just send me a note. I'm going to put my email address actually in the link as well. I'm going to post it here. I'll say it. It's McFarlanemedia@gmail. I'll put it in the chat here. McFarlanemedia@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a note, McFarlane. Make sure I spelled it right. And there's lots of important things to talk about as well. You know, I want to have a conversation as well about Georgia Fort and Don Lemon, the bravery they exhibited in covering the citizens who showed up to protest at the church in St. Paul and who have been charged by the federal government for their conducting a protest in a church. Love to have your thoughts, pro or con, about that. It's a critical issue, and we need to talk about it. Again, let me know where you're from. Let me know. Doc Sanchez, you're from Albuquerque, New Mexico. You say thanks for the discussion. Thank you for listening, Doc. And again, if you have the energy or the time or the desire, love to have you bring you on screen and just have the conversation. You know, when I've been doing this show, I started doing this show on KFAI radio almost 20, 30 years ago. Actually, I started doing broadcasts a little longer than that because I was doing a show on KQRS. It was a show that was 10 minutes and it was aired like at 3 a.m. That's back when, this is back in the 70s maybe, or the early 80s. And that was their commitment to diversity or to equity and fairness. Give a black guy like Al McFarlane 10 minutes to have it on at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. But, you know, we took it and we rolled with it, and it led to us getting connected to KFAI and emerging as the host of the conversation with Al McFarlane. That started off, and then that emerged to a project that was very exciting that we called the Insight KMOJ Public Policy Forum at Lucille's Kitchen. We were doing live shows at a restaurant here in North Minneapolis for a number of years, and we did those as a simulcast with the Black station KFAI and the alternative or counterculture station KFAI, where we still are today. And that show airs every Tuesday live on the radio, audience of 300,000 people every week on KFAI. Love to have you join us there as well. We're on tomorrow, Tuesdays, 1 to 2 o'clock. And then we live stream this show every day of the week, including this show on Tuesday. But the mission from the beginning was to tell our story, to hear our voice, and to have conversations with people. So when I had the 10-minute show, what I do is say to my guests, you know, we got 10 minutes. Treat this as if it's the last 10 minutes of your life. What is it that the world needs to know that you lived to tell the world? What is it? Be that serious about this conversation, and also understand that this is me and you, two of us in conversation, either eye to eye or ear to ear on the phone or however we were doing it. But the beauty of it is this personal, private, intimate conversation between two people that care, that are seeking to be active listeners, respectful listeners, who are seeking to understand each other, to hear each other, and to speak to each other, to speak to the power. Well, here's another phrase I've used. I tell people that I talked to my sister-in-law this morning and said, let me shout out my sister-in-law, Fanny Johnson, out of Mississippi, out of native of Crystal Springs, Mississippi, but lives in Durant, Mississippi now, former and retired school teacher, about just reviewing stuff with her. And I said, Sister Fanny, my objective, my personal intent when I encounter people, connect with people, is to connect to the presence, the spirit of the Creator in that person. I hope that our connection is a connection between creators. It's bigger than our body. It's bigger than our story, yet it is our story, and yet it's in our body. But it's a way to understand the continuity of our existence. I say that when we connect at this level, not only are we having this moment, which is what it is, we're also having an experience with eternity. We come to know that this moment is a gateway. It connects everything that ever existed, and it connects that to everything that will exist. We, you, between us and among us, the gateway to eternity. That's why this moment is precious. This moment is powerful. This moment is meaningful. And that's why we have to treat it that way and give it our best. Give it our best. Well, go back to Doc Sanchez. I believe we are near to being forced into armed resistance. I'm not sure what you're saying, Doc, how I would to be full of it. So maybe write that again and tell me what you're saying, because I don't fully understand that. But I hear you. And, over the past year, I've talked to people, well, actually coming up to the election that returned Donald Trump to power. There was a real palpable sense of the possibility of an armed response to Trump losing the election. There are people that believe that this past election was stolen, but nobody is going back saying we should deny elections because there were flaws or problems or suspicions around the last election, except for that's what Trump said. And that's what he's saying now for the 2026 midterms, and what he has promised, I think, if I'm wrong, correct me, for the 2028 general elections. I think I saw him saying to Republicans, vote for me this time and you don't need to vote again. I don't need your votes because we just don't need it. What does that mean? What does it mean? Doc, thanks for the comment. Let me put it up again. He said, I'd love to be wrong, but Orange Dude will suspend elections and or disavow election results. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. So we have to be aware. And the question is, Doc, you're raising the question, what does that look like? I had the feeling, and I heard the people saying that the disenfranchised whites, the WEI community, was prepared to, or being ginned up to be violent if they lost the last election. What's going to happen coming up? Are they ginning up to deny an election going forward. If they lose the midterms, what happens? What happens 2 years out? So I think we have to talk about it. And I think we have to talk about it in ways that ensure that we have the guardrails in place. We have the systems, the processes, the transparency, the accountability at all levels, from local neighborhood block clubs to city councils and regional councils and legislatures and county and people in our national legislature and the bureaucracies that mean, governance for our country. We need to pay attention, and we need to make sure that we are, um, are aware. Doc, again, thank you for hanging with me on this. Same comment. Love to be wrong, but Orange will suspend elections. What do you think about that? Is it a possibility? I think most of us say no, they can't do that, and most of us are saying they won't declare martial law, and they won't invade the cities, and they won't have mass incarceration. But why are they building concentration camps around the country? What is the business interest of privatized prisons that need bodies to be profitable? Where do we go with that? Well, listen, I want to thank all of you who are watching. I invite you to read Inside News. So let me, can you put the URL, Jarrett, put in the issue URL in the chat. And I invite you to look at Inside News. If you can do that, and look at Inside News. And if you want to, here's another note from Boyce. Boyce, here we go. Let me put this up. Boyce Jones says, when I first met you, I was at Lucille's in 2002. I was a staffer for the governor's race for the Green Party. Inside News was a resource for my candidate. From Cheryl and Hardy Brown in San Bernardino, those are friends of mine, publishers. And from my friends in Chicago Heights, my friend Martin, Lorenzo Martin, owned the newspaper, the Black newspaper in Chicago Heights. He says, I wonder what the future looks like without voices inspired by the likes of you guys. What happens with no Al McFarlane in the future? Well, what I can tell you, I appreciate that comment, but that, brother, I say, is not a possibility, because I look at our young people, your and my children and grandchildren, and what I see is brilliance, and what I see is genius, and what I see is fearlessness, and what I see is a commitment, a demand for the truth, and an awareness that one truth may not be the absolute truth, that there may be many, and that there may be many pathways to the truth. What's the saying? In my Father's house, there are many mansions, and if it were not so, I would not have told you. And so we recognize that there are many ways into the society that we have to build, that we seek to build, but that we can do this. And we've done it before. Our being here is a reflection of the genius in our DNA. And the genius in our DNA is the core for all of humanity. It's not us versus them. It's us. It's us as the core ingredient for the all. We simply, in my view, must keep doing what we've been doing, do more, work harder, believe, and do all we can to elevate those that are behind us and for whom we become platforms for their launch into the new understanding, the new sense of equity, the new sense of balance, the new sense of cooperation, the new sense of understanding differently our relationship with the environment, with the water, with the soil, with the minerals, with other living things and with things that are not living, but how we're all connected and part of the same. and how we have an obligation to continue to discover. I'm impressed by the movement of technology. How do we not allow ourselves to be victims of technology, but use technology to enable us to be our very best selves as human beings? I think that's possible. That's what we're going to do. That's what I believe. Well, listen, I want to thank all of you who drop notes of voice. Thank you, my friend. And again, love to have you join me in the studio. Uh, Doc Sanchez, thank you so much for your comments, for watching, and for the encouragement. Thank you. Also, Loretta Arredondo. Did you open up the URL that Loretta sent? Uh, uh, can you open it up and see what that says? Jarrett, I'd love to, at least have an idea of what that is, if it's something we can share or not. But open it up if you can, and then let me know what we can do with that. What else here? Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all for contributing and for chiming in. Thanks for those who put a like up. We appreciate that. And we invite you to share this conversation. We'll be here tomorrow again and all week long, talking about where we are, looking at the war in Iran, looking at what happened again in Venezuela. Look at what is happening still here in Minneapolis, looking at justice, looking at freedom, and looking at the role that we have to play in ensuring. I came across this idea in the last couple of days. I asked guests, I'm going to see if I can package this. Let me know how you think about this. Let me know what you think. So I think I was talking to, I forgot, one of my guests last week. And I said, I'll do it right now. Today is March 2nd, 2026. I say, look, guest, my friend, sister, brother, close your eyes and imagine that, teleport us to March 2nd, 2126. So I'm asking you, Boyce Jones, and I'm asking you, Loretta, and I'm asking you, Doc Sanchez. Imagine that right now it's March 2nd, 2126. Today is March 2nd, 2126. And we won. We won. It's March 2nd, 2126, and we won. How does the world look? So I'm asking each of you how the world looks when we have won. Think about it. I'll ask you in the future. We'll see you next time. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.